blood as an echo inside of my veins. My heart is so hollow, your voice is so narrow, making the pain. My heart is so hollow, hollow, hollow. My heart is so hollow, hollow, hollow.
Hello, friends.
Hello.
To Authortube Chat. We have friends today. In case you
We do. A friend.
didn't notice. Wait. Haha.
Ugh, every time.
I was filming a very angry video the other night, so I had the display names turned off. And now we no longer do.
Oh.
I
Angry video.
deleted it when I was done. I had, sometimes you just have to like vent on video about things and people, and then you just delete it, because if not,
Yeah.
like,
Right.
the FBI is going to come to your house again. So I had to do that. And I do mean again. It's fine. It's totally fine. We have friends today. We have Cam joining us today because we're going to be talking about horror things. And that just seemed like a logical conclusion because Kate and I both are just getting started into the horror world.
Yes.
Cam's a little more familiar. So it seemed like a topic that we should have someone who knew more than us joining for.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sometimes you just got to bring in an expert or at least someone more knowledgeable than yourself.
Yeah, it's really just going to be us asking you questions the entire chat.
I feel like it's a good rule of thumb to jump out ahead and clarify. I'm not an expert, just in case I do say anything that someone picks up on as wrong, but I'll do my best.
Anybody who knows more than me is an expert to me. We have Laura is here, who needs a distraction. And Laura also writes horror, but like short horror and creepy things. Yes. Laura unnerves me a little. And I like
In
it.
a wonderful way. Yes.
Right. And I like it. Hello, friends. Hello, all of the friends. Kate was dancing.
I was. Every time.
Every time. We are going to have to make an Authortube Chat countdown, and I can share it with you, and you can use it too.
I love that. Okay.
Because we're cool.
Oh, Shay's here. Hey, Shay.
There is a wild Shay. And then Anna Kristen and JC. On another tab. I don't know what the music is, but just link down below because I live my life like that. Again, absolutely. Again, the first 2 times was not enough. Bring it on. Anyway, hello. Raphael needs all the advice you can get on horror. Look, I came as prepared as humanly possible for this conversation. I made a banner. It says, "What is horror?" That's all I did. This is. I know this is like a topic of conversation as far as like there are different things that people consider horror. Like there's multiple different ideas of what horror is, and there's kind of like some gatekeeping. But that's really all I am.
Does a community exist without gatekeeping? Like every genre, there's like just hobbies, everything must have the gatekeepers.
Yeah, the more passionate people are about something, the more people you get that are just, kind of ruin it for everyone else.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to have fun.
Well, and so Jess and I were reading this month's book club pick, and we were like, I mean, it's clearly horror, but it wasn't the kind of horror I was expecting, like not even stereotypical horror, because it was clearly horror. I guess, again, what is horror?
I think for me, who is just getting started into horror, which I guess is what we should go with. What is horror to you? For me, it was always something that I didn't want to pick up because it was always like a gory slasher film on paper. And I don't like, I get nauseous thinking about that. It's not my favorite thing. I will watch slasher movies now, but I have to like do some of this because the plots are sometimes good, but the gory part's not so much. And so I was like, why would I want to read that? I have learned that that is a part of horror, but not all of them. So some I do enjoy. What is horror to Catherine?
That's also what I thought horror was. And I think I understood like psychological horror as well. But then outside of those two options, I was kind of, all of it was new to me.
I like R.L. Stein horror.
Yeah.
I gotta say, Kate, for someone who, well, as you said yourself, wasn't much into horror, and I don't know if it was your first time writing horror, but your story in the anthology, which comes out tomorrow for most of you, by the way, was actually really, really good. And I'm not just saying that.
Thank you, Cam. That was my concern all along the way. I was like, "What is this horror enough?" So,
no, it was really good. I was going to say it was really good for a first time, but it was just good, full stop.
Thank you.
I think the thing I liked the most is that you managed to, what a lot of people struggle with when writing horror short stories is adding personality and quirks to the characters because they want to focus more on scaring the reader, so they don't put a lot of effort into the characters themselves. And because it's such a short story, that can be hard for a lot of people. But yeah, you've made a well-rounded character. I was very pleasantly surprised.
Thank you.
Shay's in here as well, by the way. Just a quick self-plug.
Wherever
Shay with
it
the
is,
hobbies.
wherever it is that she went, I know she's here somewhere. There's a one. We love the Shay, always and forever. I am astounded at her memory of people like who show up in her chats. Like she always knows like who you are, what you're working on, like your parents' name, what your pet eats for dinner. Like she just knows all the things and it blows my mind. I'm like, I don't remember what I ate for dinner yesterday, let alone 16 other people.
It really is. It makes me feel when I go to her lives, I feel so like, I don't know, it feels so heartwarming. The personal greetings each time. And I'm like, man, first off, I don't have the best memory anyways, but like, I think the effort, because I'm sure it's not effortless. So it's like, Shay's also putting effort behind remembering all of these things. And I think that's just so wonderful.
It's like
I
you
think
feel
a few
so
times I
welcome.
popped in. No, you go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the few times I popped in, she's been like sitting there knitting and stuff. It's like, oh, this is cozy.
It's so cozy.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It makes me feel inadequate because I'm like, I remember some of these people. I don't know who, whatever. At this point, I remember pretty much everybody, but you know.
But still, okay, so this is a question because we were talking about horror short stories. How do you think they differ, Cam, the horror short story versus like the horror novel in trying to convey horror?
Well, I'll speak more as from my experience as someone who reads a lot of horror rather than someone who writes it. But what I usually find with horror short stories over horror novels is that people tend to be a lot more outlandish and kind of creative because they know they don't have to get the reader invested in a really long narrative about something wacky. For example, Stephen King's short story, The Finger, which is one of the most, if I can swear, batshit crazy short stories I've ever read in my life.
Okay.
That's not the type of thing you could turn into a full-length novel. Just to give you a minor spoiler, it's literally about a big, long finger coming out of the guy's bathroom sink. And in my experience, with short stories, people get a lot more creative and they get a lot more fun. But if what you prefer in horror is a bit more of an emotional or psychological adventure, doesn't feel like the right word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
If you want something that's going to stick with you a lot longer, that's when novels are usually the way to go. When you guys were saying before that you avoided horror mostly because it's like slasher, that kind of stuff, that's more stuff you'll find in short stories. I very, very rarely find that in a horror novel.
Oh. And you know what I think is interesting is when I'm reading fantasy, a lot of the fantasy, like when they're killing people off, or like the battle scenes are so much more gory than what I have, you know, the amount of horror that I've read. The fantasy books are way worse.
Oh yeah, they really go in on those.
I have written
I
death
can't-
scenes more gross than what I'm comfortable reading. I don't know how this is humanly possible, but I mean, because my adult high fantasy is like they're not human, they're not from our world, so they're very hard to kill. You basically either have to like remove their heart or their head. Like
Yeah.
there's only a couple of ways you can kill these people. They're like vampires, but not really.
Vampire rules, yes.
So like you have to kill them very graphically, and it's a war. Like people are dying everywhere, so but I can't read it. Like I feel like it's because I need to have the control.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
You just, was that just like a little shiver after?
I know. I'm just like, but
You were
also,
imagining it? I just read The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, which is like a really famous horror short story. And I thought it was interesting because I think a lot of what she writes is like gothic horror, because I've read The Haunting of Hill House before. But I was reading that as a short story, and it's interesting because I wouldn't have necessarily thought of it as horror. And it's like, it's kind of, I don't even know what I classify it as. If anyone else has read The Lottery, let me know what kind of subgenre of horror you think it is. Because like that's maybe the category I'd put it in. But okay,
a lot of classic horror came out like long before the golden age of slashes in the 70s and 80s.
yeah,
And you find that a lot of with those classic I'm getting deja vu because I spoke about this in a video recently, but with a lot of classic horror, it feels a lot more like personal and intimate because it feels like it's a lot more about that author's like own fears. Like Edgar Allan Poe was notorious for it. Everyone knows about The Raven, but he did a few others that were pretty much all about his own personal fears. Like he did one about claustrophobia, and there's no like blood or gore or anything. It's literally just about a guy waking up thinking he's been buried alive. And that's what you find with a lot of classic horror. People seem to forget that horror itself has a ton of subgenres, and you'll actually very rarely find like slashes in books unless people are trying to emulate the movies, that kind of stuff. But you will still find a lot of blood and gore. I won't say you won't find that, but usually it's a lot less like someone in a mask. It'll be more like, you know, people ending up in situations that terrify them.
Oh.
Or like Laura said, cosmic horror as well is another big one in the classics.
What? Could you tell me what cosmic horror is? I'm looking it up, but like,
Sure.
oh, Lovecraftian horror. Oh,
Yeah. People get the wrong idea about cosmic horror, rightfully so, because the first thing that comes to mind is like outer space, that kind of stuff.
Space horror. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like,
immediately what I thought. I was
alien
like,
drama?
oh,
I don't know.
I mean, technically it could go there, but cosmic horror is more just like fear of the unknown. Like Lovecraftian horror is known as the pioneer of cosmic horror because I'm sure you guys know about like Cthulhu, that big giant octopus-based guy, but it was the cosmic horror there was less about like how big and scary the thing was and more like how little we know about it, and like what is it, where did it come from, how dangerous is it, what can it do, that kind of stuff. There's very little in those stories about like it actually doing things, and more so just the fear of what it could do, you know. But cosmic horror is just like really epic scale stuff that we can't hope to understand as humans.
I am currently reading Lake's Edge by Lyndall Clipstone. It's
Nice
like
cover.
it's a YA horror. It's really a romance, if we're being honest.
Oh.
But it definitely has, like, now that I have read a few, like, I don't want to say basic horror books, but some horror books that didn't, you know, gross me out, I can see the horror elements in it. So I'm like, I get that, but let's just call this a romance because that's what it is. But if you want to call it a horror, I guess it's a little spooky, but I've read mid-grade spookier than that, so.
There's some Goosebumps books that still get me today.
I have read, I think that was that's like my 17th book this month. I'm reading all scary books this month. That's like book 17. I've read adult to mid-grade. The mid-grades have been scarier than the adult books. Like, this is terrifying. And then I read the adult book and I'm like, wow, this is really super boring, but okay.
Yeah, people underestimate how much like children's and mid-grade horror can actually creep you out because they don't waste any time trying to get you with like pseudo-intellectual stuff. They just they give it to you on a plate and they're like, here's what you need to be scared of.
Here's all the creep right here.
Yeah.
Telltale Heart. I did read that like in school as a kid. So I don't know how horror-y that is. I can't say horror. I don't know if it's my Southern Ohio accent or what, but horror is hard.
Can I tell you that when I was a kid, and I still struggle now, but like mirror, I just would try to say it. I just say mirror.
That's what I say.
Mirror. It's like horror. It's just like horror.
Horror.
Just trails.
Too many R's.
It is.
Blake said just gothic horror. Mostly romance. It's classified as a gothic horror. It's a romance. It's a good one though. I'm having a good time. But also, you know, I've read the cask of whatever that word is. But again, I live in Southern Ohio, so we didn't get to that until like my senior year of school. So like the last year of school.
Charlotte's comment there is pretty much exactly what I was saying. Like with Poe writing so many stories about people being buried alive, it's because it comes from very personal kind of phobias, that type of stuff. Whereas a lot of modern horror is just an author thinking like, what would be the scariest thing for the reader rather than what am I actually scared of, which is okay. Like that can still work out perfectly fine.
Psychological horror for the
That's what if I had to classify it, Nicole, that's what I was thinking, but it doesn't feel that way. Like as you're reading it, I mean, there's an underlying sense of dread that she does a great job of like weaving at the beginning, but yeah. Anyways, I have so many thoughts.
Shirley Jackson's great.
Yeah.
One of the absolute OGs of horror.
It's definitely something that I want to get into, and I'm hoping beyond all hopes that next year I have enough books off of my physical TBR that I feel comfortable just like reading things I want to read, not things that 2017 booktube me thought I needed. It was a bad year.
That's fair. Cam, who's your favorite horror author then? Like, or also follow up, who would you recommend for those of us who are like new to horror? Like, this is where you should start, and this is my favorite.
Okay. I don't like have a favorite horror author just because most of the horror I read is like indie shorts. But if I was to recommend for any new horror readers, I would probably say Joe Hill, who is Stephen King's son. He has 2 collections of short stories that I really like. One's called Full Throttle. That's the newer one. And the other one, which you should probably start with, is Strange Weather. Because there's some really odd stories in there, but it's just a good kind of ease you into horror, I would say, but still really, really good. I think I prefer him to Stephen, actually.
Oh, very cool.
I have not read any Stephen King to this point, but I have been told that like if and when I get there that I should start with short stories of his like collections to get an idea of what kind of his works work better for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seems like a good place to start.
I've read a couple of Stephen King short stories, and I can't remember which one it was, like the name of it, but it sticks out to me because they're like operating on him while he's still alive, the main character. And like, because that would be a legitimate fear, I think that's why it's just in my head at all times.
He has some really, really good ones. And his novels are a bit more difficult to get into though. Because he likes to take his time.
I want you to know, Charlotte, that prior to starting this live stream, I said, I am a horror. Take that as you will. Because Kate and I also discussed prior to going live that Ohio and Texas are basically the same place,
Very
Just-
similar.
just apart on a map.
Exactly.
So-
So, yeah.
We're just separated by like 6 other states. It's fine.
I am kind of curious. There's no way that I'm sure someone's done research on this, but because of the rise of like horror podcasts and like true life mysteries and all this other stuff, I'm curious what kind of effect that's had on the horror genre, the fiction horror genre, as opposed to these like nonfiction but told in a story manner sort of things.
I found that thrillers are really popping up like a lot now. Like thrillers are coming up in a really big way, and the line between thrillers and horror a lot of the time is very, very faint.
I was gonna ask about that. I was like, I need what is the distinction? Is there one?
Well, sometimes it's really easy to tell, like with Gone Girl, like that's very obviously a thriller, but there are still a lot of elements involved that you could easily say it's just straight up horror. But
it was a horror to read.
Yeah.
Good movie.
There's some gruesome
Again-
scenes in that involving lamps. Anyway.
To clarify, again, I'm not an expert, but if someone was to ask me what's the difference between thriller and horror, I'd probably say I think it depends more on like what the author's trying to get you to feel. Like obviously, if they want you to feel scared or terrified, then it's probably horror. But if the feeling is more suspense or dread, then maybe it's thriller. Sorry.
Okay.
Bones and Criminal Minds. Can't go to sleep after that. That's fair. Dun, dun, dun. I think Carrie is Stephen King's best book because it's short and his pacing is better than usual. You mean shorter than his 1,200 other page books?
Ah.
I'm not surprised by that.
Is interesting. Most of the books that I have read that have been from Australian authors have been crime fiction. So that tracks. Like things that actually make it here.
Yeah.
Because we're so super cool and exclusive. Bunch of clowns.
Yeah, I don't hear about many like fiction stories blowing up from Australia, to be honest. Most of the time it's like based on, non-fiction.
I know that at least like in my area, I know that Jane Harper is pretty big and she writes like crime fiction novels. So, I mean, that's the one I can think of off the top of my head. That's
I
Australian.
get it. Crime fiction is pretty good.
I mean, that's how James Patterson makes all of his dollars. So,
Yeah. Now, do you think crime fiction is its own genre?
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
I feel like crime fiction requires there to be someone who is like a professional investigator of some sort.
Yeah, well, I was wondering, I was like, I guess technically maybe it falls under mystery usually or something. But
Because I feel like a mystery, like you could be trying to solve a murder, but it would just be like me trying to solve a murder.
it can be anyone. Yeah.
But if it was like an FBI agent, it would be a crime thriller, crime documentary. Ooh, God, don't watch those either before you go to bed. It's a bad idea.
Crime fiction's changed a lot as well. It's a lot less now about like the, rugged detective that had a dead wife or whatever, and now it's more just like how graphic can we make the actual crime itself kind of thing.
Yeah, how long can we linger over this mangled body?
Yeah.
Describe it in detail. Yeah.
I've seen some too, like small children. And you're just like, okay, well, it's okay.
Yeah.
Nice to be here. All right.
I really like the noir kind of detective novels from back in the day. I always found them really fun.
I'm trying to think, like, the most, like, detective-y crime novel-y I got as a kid was reading like Babysitter's Club books where they would be like trying to solve a crime or something. I don't know. Solve a mystery. Who was putting secret admirer letters in Jenny's locker? That's pretty much all I got. Clearly, I've been on the uphill swing for a while. Hello, Stieg. Oh. Didn't know it was you till you started talking because somebody got bangs and then put her hair up and now she is unrecognizable.
Like a whole new person.
I am Beetlejuice today.
It's
the
wonderful.
hair and all. It's great. Choose Your Own Adventure books. I remember a Choose Your Own Adventure, R.L. Stine, something about peanut butter and jelly. That's all I got.
The Choose Your Own Adventure books from R.L. Stine was so good. What were they called? I think Reader Beware, You Choose the Scare or something like that.
Yes, that's, I think, exactly it.
And they had like the shiny holographic covers. They were fantastic.
Yeah, I read one and it was something about peanut butter and jelly, but that's all I remember. Listen, Wallace, stop pinging me. I'm trying to do a live show. You know you're here.
How rude.
How rude. I muted her. The private eye style character has more graphic horror and gore than cozy mystery. Cozy mystery to me is still mystery, obviously, but I don't think it ever gets scary.
I do love a good cozy mystery. I agree though. Well, there's a little bit of sometimes the like PI or the like tea shop owner can get into like, you know, at the 90% mark when they go to confront the bad guy. But like it's a tinge of the smallest of tinges of fear because they gotta stay alive to run the tea shop. So I say that as a lover of cozy mysteries.
I think it's more of like there's danger, but not.
There's danger. Yeah, it's not really scary. Yeah.
Is cozy mystery like a woman in the window, a woman on the train, that kind of stuff?
No,
I haven't read those, but I think that's just straight up like more thriller.
That's just a thriller. A cozy mystery
Or like
is
Agatha
like
Christie or something.
Could be, but still even not quite that. It's usually like a bookshop owner or a cafe owner, and there's like it's a small town and there's some kind of a small town mystery. Raphael says Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah.
JC said Hallmark mystery movies, which would also be like a cozy mystery, like a Hallmark mystery movie as a book.
Yes.
Mrs. Marple would be cozy mystery-ish.
My mom's obsessed with those like type of what is it like, you know, when it's like an older woman that's like stumbles across a mystery kind of thing.
You got it. That's cozy mystery. And it's wonderful. I do love how it's the same woman or person who's always stumbling upon them. And like
it's always like some small town.
The author tries to explain why it's them each time because they're kind of nosy. Like it's a necessary personality trait. But
does Nancy Drew count as a cozy mystery? Yeah. In my opinion, in my weathered opinion of 2 minutes, yes. Yeah. It's more social. It's like a social club, but for murder. That's not creepy at all.
I'm so into that.
You know,
if you had a book called The Murder Social Club or something like that, I'd be like, sign me up.
The local indie bookstore, our book club, the book this month was A Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. And it was like octogenarians in a murder club. They like met every Thursday and would try to solve cold cases. And it sounded so interesting. And it was the most boring thing I've ever read in my life. I DNF'd like super early because I was like,
That's upsetting.
I'm trying to read 31 books this month. I don't have time to spend it on books I don't enjoy. Get out of my life. So, yeah.
Cam, can I ask the question of, except that I'll find out when I get to book tomorrow, but how many different kinds of horror did people put in the anthology? Like, how many different kinds did people dabble with?
Surprisingly, a pretty various assortment. I think there's something in it for like everyone, because when I read through the whole thing, and some of them are just like straight up kind of, you know, your more traditional gore, scary kind of stuff, and then there's more I would compare to like classic. There's one from Andrew's horror house, and his is about a fisherman going to Scotland, and there's like the legend of a Loch Ness kind of creature, and all this like really more what's the word I'm looking for? It's not so much like in your face. It's more like creepy and chilling kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So there's definitely something in there for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's cool, because with one theme, people were able to come up with so many different types of stories.
There was so many different interpretations. It was really good. I don't think any of the stories in here are like similar to each other.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that it's people traveling.
Yeah.
Have you seen the paperback yet?
I have not.
Looks really nice. Sorry to
It does.
Sorry to basically self-plug in the middle of the stream, but
Please do. That's why we're here.
Related self-plug.
It's the back too.
Oh, the back looks awesome. Since I'd only seen the ebook, the back looks cool.
I think it's already out in Australia and releases tomorrow in America.
You can plug other people's books during my live streams. I don't care.
We talk about all the books.
We do.
Including our own.
You know, I feel like it's an Authortube chat, so anything that has to do with Authortubers is part of the conversation, so it's all good.
Plus, it's for charity too, so that's pretty cool.
This is the thing I was gonna do. That's what I was looking for. Listen, if you don't link, I'm going to come after you. I don't think it made a link. I'm going to slit its throat in a minute. Speaking of horror,
It linked.
Does everyone on the stream want to see Kate's author photo?
I'm like, she's frozen, so she can't tell us no.
I added everyone's author bios at the end of each story, so you can see all the details about the story, author of the story you just wrote. So, there's yours.
Oh my gosh, a photo where you can actually see your face.
I know.
really nice.
Not half across of my computer. I got the boyfriend to take pictures of me, and I didn't like them, and so I took the phone back and took a selfie, and I liked it better. And I was like, you know what? I will be in charge from now on.
Well, it looks like a
find a good
professional author photo.
background and stand in front of. You turn the camera on, find a good background, stand in front of it, record it, and then watch back and pick snapshots. I don't know.
That's what I do when I record videos. But I was like, the problem was I thought it would be easier. I'm like, I'm just gonna go outside and you just take a couple pictures real quick, and it apparently was not that easy.
You know, some people are not so great at photography skills, and that's okay.
It is okay. It is.
He has other worthwhile skills.
There you go.
I don't know what any of them are, but I'm sure he has them. That's horrible.
I'm gonna go back and clip this and send it to him.
Oh Lord, I'm gonna cry now. It's fine. Anyway. Yay.
Oh, thanks, Regina.
Thanks, Regina.
Hope you like it.
I know I can find it. I was just there earlier today looking at it. Anyway, that's how I live my life now. Nicole's having a live stream on Sunday talking about The Witcher. Saturday.
Ooh.
That's not
that's
Sunday.
awesome.
That's a Saturday. I can't read. I mean, since we're plugging all the things,
Yes.
this Friday starts the Worldwide Writeathon at, I believe, 6 o'clock. So about the same time this started, but a little earlier on the Worldwide Writeathon channel. We'll be doing our kickoff chat. And then who takes us off into Magic Never Never Land? I don't even remember who has the first chat. You would think that, like, as someone who runs the dang thing, I would know.
Like,
but
I'll look up the Instagram.
but I don't know. I'm like, I don't even know.
I'm hosting Sprint 6, and Cam's going to be on it with me.
And it's at the butt crack of dawn for some of us.
Yes,
AKA me.
6:30 a.m. Central Time, 7:30 for Miss Jess. And
It's
for Cam,
early.
it's like a late time, a chill time.
My phone will only show me like the most recent, like 6 pictures on Instagram. What did I do to deserve this?
Naya, person of fiction.
Yeah,
Kick
Nia
off.
has our first sprint. That took way too long to figure out. It's 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Nia will be kicking us off. And we'll have 48 hours of sprints. Look at all of you people who know my schedule better than me. I love you guys. Oh, and Wallace does have chat too. Wallace, for some reason, thought that I could get off work at 5 o'clock and be where she's at by 9 o'clock when her sprint starts. I asked her if she has a teleportation device because it's an 8-hour drive. Nope, not working. Sorry. I love her. I love Wallace. She's gonna yell at me because I called her out again twice in one stream in like 5 minutes. But I do it out of love, Wallace.
As you should.
Love. You are at 3:30 a.m. Central. You put that down as your availability. So it's all on you. Because 0 chats. Listen, you got your picture shared in the Instagram. So, you know, no complaints, right? You're not allowed to complain. We do love Dear Wallace. I am crazy. I have lost my mind anyway.
Do we want to ask if the chat has any questions about horror?
Any questions or hot takes or
Cam, do you have a hot take about horror?
Or questions?
I think it's more lukewarm take, but I think horror as a genre is just really misunderstood and underappreciated. But that's a whole long conversation that I've already had a million times. But yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of people have a bit of a wrong idea about horror, which isn't their fault. It's more so just because of publishers and that kind of stuff. But I think nowadays, unless you're Stephen King or you know him, you can't really get published in horror traditionally.
I think it's interesting that horror as a genre sort of lacks respect from the publishing industry, whereas like on the other hand, romance tends to lack respect from certain readers, but is like the backbone of the publishing industry in a lot of ways, whereas I don't think other genres are really treated. I'm sure some people could say sci-fi is not treated as well as it should be, but like, you know, I don't know. It's all very interesting.
Romance quite literally is carrying publishing at the moment.
It is, yeah.
I'm trying to think. The last couple of weeks when I've been with Julie at Pages and Pens during her chats, there's been a little bit of discussion about like the publishing industry and how they are, and I guess this has been a topic of conversation on Twitter too, but we don't use Twitter, so how would we know? There's been a topic of conversation about how TikTok is making reading cool again. Whereas like BookTube has never done that. And they're like, yes, but also if you look at all of the books that are doing astronomically well after TikTok, it's romance. The things that the publishing industry poo-poos on. Like TikTok is selling romance after romance after romance, especially Faye romance and Colleen Hoover. Like, she could not have picked a better time to start self-publishing all of her books. She did, like, I don't know, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, was like, I'm just going to self-publish from now on. And like now she's got like Kardashians reading her books, half of the Bachelorettes posting it on TikTok. Like, she's
crushing
but
it.
also, and they're like, but BookTube never did that for anybody. Blah, 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 blah. It's been topic conversation. I don't know. Just talking about things.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There is a lot of like anger against BookTok I found on Twitter and stuff, and I just have to say it does remind me a little bit of when people were giving BookTube a lot of shit when it was coming up. It's like, are we becoming the boomers now? Like,
We are the boomers
We
now.
are the boomers now, but
like
you know,
BookTube's had its moments in the spotlight as well. People seem to forget they had a big New York Times piece about it. It's just, I think immediately after all that spotlight got turned onto us, a lot of drama kept popping up as well. So I can kind of understand why a lot of media distanced themselves from it as well. But yeah, I don't know.
we don't have drama.
What, BookTube drama?
There's no drama here. We don't have like entire forum systems set up to talk about our drama. What's wrong with you?
Although I do have to say, it does kind of rub me the wrong way that YouTube itself like took the name BookTube and started like a BookTube,
A whole YouTube
originals
series.
thing, which was fine at the start because they were featuring booktubers, but they've just stopped doing that completely now. And now it's just celebrities talking about books, and they're calling it BookTube. It's like, at the very least, throw a few booktubers in there from time to time.
Taking all of our things. We made you money.
I'm a little
Not
bit
me
salty about that.
specifically, but somebody made you money. It wasn't me, but somebody. Okay. Does anyone know if there are any high fantasy horror books? Because that seems like that would get me into it since I already read fantasy.
You could look for Grimdark. Grimdark fantasy is basically the horror version of fantasy.
That tracks. Makes sense. I sound like my 12-year-old niece. That tracks.
A brief guide to Grimdark. I have 5 tabs open from this conversation already to research about horror.
I have. Hang on, I've got one I can show you right now.
Yeah.
This one, Godblind by Anna Stevens, has a lot of horror elements, and this is a really good one. I enjoyed. It's a very high fantasy though.
A booktuber that I know of that reads a lot of grimdark fantasy is Holly Hart's Books, who's actually local to me as well.
Oh, that's cool.
But she reads mostly grimdark fantasy. So, not that I've read any of it, so I don't know what her taste is like. But I watch her channel because I like her. She's happy and bubbly, and so, it's fine. Also, as Wallace says, all of the Ice Planet Barbarians, just so you're aware. RL Science Masterclass was amazing. Noted.
That's what I know. JC's taking that too, or took it. I'm curious.
People forget R.L. Stein's like one of the highest selling authors of all time. I feel like no one really talks about him a whole lot.
Yeah, but he's such a part of like everyone's childhood
and
beyond. But
I mean, that's good. When it comes to horror movies and shows, I haven't seen it in books. LGBT characters and even POC characters either not in or die in the beginning. You're not wrong.
I think it's interesting that you say I haven't seen it in books. I'm curious. I obviously don't read enough horror, but I am curious. I wonder why that is. That it doesn't happen in books too. I mean.
I'm trying to make sure that I'm reading it correctly.
Oh, LGBT. POC
I think
character.
it's more like they always kill off the POC characters or the LGBT characters early on in the movies.
I have
Or
a theory
it's
about
often
that.
slashers too.
I have a
So-
theory about that. It's because I think, and I'm not justifying it, but I think what's happening is a lot of authors want to make their story diverse. So what they do is they throw in like a POC or LGBT like best friend or side character. And what's the best way to get the protagonist pissed off or scared is to kill the side character. So that's what ends up happening. And again, not saying that's right, but
from a
think that's
story
formula they put
perspective,
themselves into. Like killing off the best friend side character is fine, but you know, but if,
shouldn't become a
but if
trope.
it becomes a pattern where you're doing that to characters that are POC or LGBT, obviously, you know, that's something you need to take a look at. I think we missed a comment from Grace Continues as well, a little bit further up.
Da, 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 da. Ha!
Oh,
You are correct.
I feel like Kate should answer this first, seeing as she's technically a horror author now.
I am horror. Yeah. Well, specifically with the story I wrote for the anthology, I did struggle with pacing, and that I think I was building it. The beginning was longer in the first draft, and then the ending was too short because there's a little bit of like I don't want to say a surprise twist element, but like part of the horror scary aspect to me was how I cut it off at the end. And so to do that initially, I was like, well, I'll just make the end really short, but that doesn't work because you need to like keep the dread going. So to answer your question, yes, I have had struggles. I think it's better in the final version, but I did struggle to get there.
I definitely have not written anything that is horror-y, but Kate and I have discussed a book that I have plans for in the future that I only know the ending of.
Yeah.
And the more I learn about horror, the more that I'm like, you're going to have to write a horror book if you want to write that ending, because no one else is going to allow it.
Mm-hmm.
Hi.
Yeah, pacing for horror is always really tricky because kind of like you said, Kate, you want to like build up towards this like scary thing happening, but obviously by the time that scary thing happens, you just kind of drop it and then that's it. That's the end of the story. But I felt like you did a good job like throwing in stuff along the way that built the suspense towards it. So
Thank you.
like there's a particular bit with the neighbor across the street that creeped me out.
Yeah. Yay. But what about you, Cam? What do you prefer, the fast or slow building of tension?
I've done both because you know I've got the short stories, but also I wrote that psychological horror novel and the longer one. That was so much more difficult because mostly because it's meant to be psychological horror, and that's a very tricky thing to try and do without making it too much focus on like the action. You want to focus more on the emotional and like mental turmoil. But I've had so many people tell me the pacing felt too fast, and so many people tell me the pacing was too slow. So I still have no idea if I did it well or not.
Yeah.
But it's really, really tricky. I would give a tip or something, but I don't think there really is a magic fix for it. You just kind of have to feel it out.
So much like everything else.
Yeah.
Gut instinct. Got it.
Yeah, there's only so much advice you can get and give. At the end of the day, it's going to come down to how good you are at it.
Oh, Elaine's point's really interesting.
This one?
Yeah. From the dread to the terror to the horror is how I work the acts for my horror. That's fascinating.
I mean, that makes sense. And that, like, build up. But again, haven't done it, so don't know. Why am I hosting this?
The title of my horror
No.
novel.
Yeah.
I don't want to hijack the stream or anything, but I'll
Do
just
it.
quickly show
Do
you.
it,
It's
Cam.
called Welcome Descent. Came out in January this year. It's about a guy being tortured by the sins of his past.
Ooh,
I love that little one line. That's so good.
Yeah, I'm not great with elevator pitches, but I'm trying.
cliffhangers.
Have you
are
ever
great.
thought about writing like a horror short story, Jessica?
One day, maybe.
You need
Who
to now.
knows? I have now. I have to.
This is the challenge for you after this stream.
After the stream is okay. Can it be like in January after I finish the current project so that I can split the
Actually,
project
I
with
have
you?
changed my mind. It absolutely has to be in
Because
January.
would you like to read my novel? Like, I
Yeah,
don't
you
know.
have a deadline.
I have a deadline. Ask me how much I've worked on it this month.
I feel like that said it all.
I did some work one day.
The
The world
beauty
might
of
write it.
horror short stories is that they can be really, really short, more so than a lot of other genres. Like,
Yeah.
there's a thing called one-line horrors as well, where people try to tell a scary story just with one sentence, and some of those are really, really good.
They're really. Have you tried that?
I haven't done it myself yet because the
Okay.
idea of that kind of terrifies me, but I want to.
That's what I want to see a video from you that's like the one line horror and then like a sub 500 word horror and then like
I like working your way up.
that's
right?
what I want to see. Yeah.
I could try that.
A 100-word horror story. God, the word horror is a horror.
It's good practice too because because obviously with one sentence or 100 words, the horror or the scariness has to be in what you're not saying, and that's
Yeah.
like a huge part of actually writing horror as well. Oh, thanks, Regina. Much appreciated.
I just read that completely backwards.
As Charlotte was explaining more why and what happened.
Why?
Yeah, and I agree.
I mean, I want to say which is fair, but also not really. Like, it's one of those things where like you understand the reasons why someone did it, but that doesn't make it a good reason.
Yeah. Right. I understand.
Yeah,
the
it can be
history
tricky
of that.
because in horror, like, well, in any genre, actually, you don't want characters to be immune or like just completely immortal just because of their identity. But at the same time, I think the issue is when it becomes a pattern.
Do you think that's one of the rules of horror in comparison with other stories? Like, you know, a lot of novels, maybe fantasy can get away with a little bit more like ambiguity, but I know going into most stories that the main character is not going to die or something that's not really going to happen to the main character, whereas that seems to classically be like the rule.
I think with horror more than most genres, you don't know if the character's going to live or die because horror authors love bookending their story with the character dying.
Yeah.
But at least you know usually they're going to make it to the end of the story. But with side characters, it could go either way.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's necessary for dogs to die? No.
No.
How
Please
dare all
You
of
can
them.
kill all the people you want, but can you leave the dog alone?
Yeah.
I'm not emotionally prepared for it. I'm not emotionally ready for it. I don't want to spend my entire night crying over a horror novel. So like let's not do it.
I'm not against killing the dog, but I think it's so overdone now that it's kind of predictable. But you could say the same for like movies about dogs. If there's a movie that is about a dog, the dog's going to die. Spoiler alert.
There's literally websites where you can look up if the dog dies or not in books and movies and things. So
I appreciate that so much.
I'm telling you.
That's such a good idea.
Last year I read The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones, and it was exactly what I didn't want in a horror novel because it's very bloody and very gory and just like I know that's the purpose. Like I didn't want to say it was bloody and gory for no reason because that was the reason. But for me, who was like, that's really the first thing I read like that, I was like, why is it like this though? Why am I here?
Stephen Graham Jones is really, really good. I think he's going to be one of the bigger names in horror over the next couple of years.
I really enjoyed his writing, but it made me physically ill. So,
Yeah. He
so it was
definitely
like,
has a very particular style.
It might be the biggest compliment you could give someone.
right.
Yeah.
Maybe
You
not
recognize
my
his writing very
particular
quickly.
vein of horror right now, but okay.
Cam, are there any other tropes that you think at this point in horror are overdone? Like you don't want to see them anymore?
It's kind of a cliche, but the horror like antagonist thinking they're dead at the end and then they're not. That one's like just a go-to for a lot of authors, especially first-time writers. They think that's a good way to like creep the person out at the end of the story. I would disagree. I think it's just kind of cheesy. The people, a lot of these are going to feel like tropes for movies as well because a lot of horror movies are being translated into books, but people moving into a new house and like the house having a sordid history of murder is kind of an overdone thing, overdone trope. But again, it's a trope, so some people might look for that. But the one thing that pisses me off the most in horror books and movies that I'm completely tired of is the creepy kids with an imaginary friend. I don't like it. I don't find it scary, and I'm sick of it. I don't want to see it anymore.
But what if they're not imaginary?
Well, they never are they? They're always like a ghost or something.
What if they put one in and it was imaginary?
It'd be a boring story, but
like everything else that was weird and horror was horror, but that one thing, they were like, actually, I'm going to take that one trope that everybody uses the heck out of and be like,
well,
no, Steve's
fair,
really just Steve. It's just, you just thought him up. Yeah.
that would be a good subversion on the trope, to be fair.
You're like, I hate this. And that guy's going to be a ghost, but it has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it's just every time there's a kid in a story, the author seems to think that the kid needs to be in some way like creepy or like they need to wake up and the kid's standing over them in their bed kind of thing. It's like people are just not going to have kids anymore if you keep doing it.
To be fair, children really do that. So
yeah, I believe it.
I mean, I don't even know how many nieces and nephews I have, but the number's north of 30. I can't keep track. That's a real thing that they do. And I have heard the weirdest things. I have seen them walk to corners and start talking to the corner. Like there's a person there. There's no one there. So kids are just weird in general.
Yeah. There seems to be an idea that it's a good way of like making some profound statement on like the corruption of innocence when they make the kid creepy. But it's just like, I mean, you're not saying anything that hasn't been said a billion times now. Just like take it back a notch, you know.
Do you have like a list of tropes that you want to tackle in horror, Cam, or like concepts? Like, is it ever growing where you're just like, this is a thing that I want to do?
Oh, that I would like to write myself.
Yeah.
I tried. I would like to try pretty much everything, to be honest. When it comes to horror, I really want to do like we were talking before about like detective crime kind of ones. I would like to do a bit more of a paranormal detective mystery, but I'll say right now, mystery is one of the hardest genres I've ever tried to write because I tried it a while ago. I tried to write like a bit of a Stranger Things set in the 80s with a serial killer instead of aliens. And I think I made it like a quarter of the way through and I was like, I can't do this. This is so hard.
Me and Shay talked about this, about how we never be able to, trying to write mystery taught us how you have to outline, because mystery novels are no joke about that. Like it is so rough. I just
so hard.
My gosh. Yeah.
You have to leave like a breadcrumb trail, sorry. A breadcrumb trail of like clues and stuff, but making them not too obvious is just one of the hardest tightropes I've ever tried to walk.
It's insane. I was writing Murder Mystery Tennessee and I got to the edge and I realized that there was no way. I committed the cardinal sin because there was no way the reader could have guessed what I'd done. And I was like, oh, fuck, I completely messed this up. And so I've been having to completely re-outline it so that they can guess who it is now. And anyways, it taught me a valuable lesson, but my God.
Yeah, and like Shay said, it gave me a whole new respect for mystery writers because I would have believed them when they said it was hard before, but trying to do it yourself, just those writers are just geniuses.
To me, it's like it's hard to find the perfect balance of not giving too much information, but also giving enough. Because sometimes you're like, I'm on page 23, I know what happens.
Yeah, if they figure it out too early, it's game over.
We've all been there. We've all been on page 23. Like, I bet you Mr. Mustard did it with a lead pipe in the observatory because he lost 3 goldfish to her in a betting game last week. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then that's what happened, which would be real weird. But then then there you are. So I like people are tired of clowns. Clowns are the worst. Sick of clowns. The inherited a house from an unknown relative, and surprise, it's haunted. I actually read The Haunting of Ashburn House by Darcy Coates this month, and it is inherited a house from a relative, and surprise, it's haunted, and it was one of the best ones I've read this month. So sometimes it can be done well, but it's also like it's going to be haunted. It's called The Haunting of Ashburn House.
Yeah, it's a popular trope for a reason,
What was the middle grade book that I got you to read recently?
Spirit Hunters.
Spirit Hunters. So that's what it vaguely remembered when Cam was like, I don't like the kids with the imaginary friends, and I don't like the haunted house they move into. And I was like, this one had both of those tropes, and it was a middle grade, and it was so good and so spooky.
It was the scariest thing I read this month.
It was great.
It was a great middle grade. The second book, which I don't think you've read the second book yet.
I haven't yet.
Even creepier.
Really?
Even creepier.
Yes.
Like the monster in that book, in the second book, is like there are adult writers who don't take it to that dark of a place.
Oh, I'm excited.
It's so weird to me that they'll do it. And I think it's because it's not like explained or like expressly drawn out for long periods of time. It's just like, this is what this thing is. And I think that's why they'll put it in middle grade. Mm-hmm. Whereas like if it's an adult, they have to like explain it all out. They don't have to, but they do. Or they can, rather.
I wouldn't want them to stop writing, moving into a haunted house kind of trope, because a lot of people search for stories like that specifically. So I'm fine with that. And, tropes aren't a bad thing. That's how people find the stories they want to read. But when it comes to the kids thing, I think that's more of a cliche, if anything. I want them to stop that. But the house thing's fine.
Right, yeah.
I mean, haunted house stories. Have you read House of Leaves?
I haven't read it, which I know is a cardinal sin as a horror fan, but I've heard the hype around it. The only reason I haven't read it because I know the language is a little bit outdated, and that's always a big turn off for me. But
I think I've read it. I've read the whole thing cover to cover once, and I've definitely spent time looking into other bits and pieces of it because it is one of those things that requires like extra attention.
Yeah.
And it definitely has like that language issue that took me out of it a lot. But I feel like I also am that person who's like, well, it's really old, and so like you kind of forgive them for it. But also at the same time, I'm like, but I wouldn't have liked this then. So why am I? Why? But I did enjoy like the creep aspect of it, not necessarily the verbiage used.
I think there's a lot of stories that were inspired by that that I enjoyed, but it's one of those things. It's like the foundation for a lot of horror, but not necessarily the type of thing that a lot of people would enjoy themselves.
Oh.
which isn't a fault against the book. It's just, product of its time.
I am seeing someone, I didn't read all of the conversation that led to this, but Adventures in Fantasy is talking about Red Riding Hood. I am curious how like classic fables kind of lead into horror, because so many of them, when you look at their originals, have such strong horror elements. I don't know if that's like a legit genre or subgenre now, but
Yeah, I don't know how much of horror now is from that, but I think people would be surprised to find how much horror elements you can find in the old fables and mythologies and stuff, because a lot of those old stories, I don't know about Red Riding Hood specifically, but a lot of those old stories did come from very dark places originally.
I mean, is there a correlation between why, like, the Grimm's fairy tales and why we say something is grim when it's something that's bad or negative?
Yeah.
I don't know, because I'm not a literature expert or a linguistics expert. I'm not an expert on anything except for how to use the wrong words in a sentence.
Yeah, because way back in the day, parents wanted to scare the crap out of their kids and make them behave, so they'd tell them these like creepy fairy tales and stuff. Nothing comes to mind immediately, but
Nicole, middle grade is like for 9 to 12-year-olds, typically. There's thousands of subgenres, but when they say something is middle grade, it means it's written for 9 to 12-year-olds.
Yeah, it's like there's
and 34-year-old adult women who don't have children and enjoy it anyway.
Yeah.
I live under the guise of I have 30-some nieces and nephews. This is just me reading to know what to point them in the direction of.
There you go.
That's how I live my life.
Still unapologetically watch Disney movies, so like it's the same thing to me as reading a middle grade book.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Don't let the TikTok people find out about that, Kate. A Disney adult is an insult now.
I know, it's fine. I've accepted my fate.
I saw that and I took it way too personally. I was like, what's wrong with Disney? Disney slaps.
How dare you?
Reminds me of when my life didn't suck,
Oh, if only. That's fair.
That's a good point, Charlotte.
Don't do this or you'll die. I did not even say anything close to the syllables that makes you turn on, so I'm going to need you to comment. I was filming a wrap-up yesterday, and one of the characters' name starts with an A and ends with a Lexa. And just in the middle of the video, you just, like, a 5-minute, like, dissertation from Wikipedia about, I don't know, some guy and how he won a gold medal and so I'm like, are you done yet? Gosh. Like, no.
Nope.
When I used to stream back in the day, just for a gag, I would like yell out. I won't do it now, but I would yell out like blah blah, do this or that. Always get people in the chat like, stop it.
How dare you?
Wallace does that a lot with me and Katie Devasia and Steek, and like just like the second you hop on and she'll say to like play something, and so now everybody is like always turning it off before they go live, and I forget, and so mine's always the one that's like I'm like, I hate you guys. Don't wander off the path or you could get lost and die in the woods. I mean, they're not wrong.
Yeah, look at Hansel and Gretel. That old fable is straight up horror.
Yeah.
Literally a cannibal witch.
So, I mean, theoretically. Does anybody have any final comments, questions, or concerns about the horror genre and or horror writing and or horror reading and or any questions for Cam while he's here? Because, I mean, he's here.
Yeah, get him in now.
Don't talk or trust to strangers. I thought I was reading that wrong, Katie, and I realized that it was you, not me. And I love you, but that hurt my brain. Don't talk to strangers. A whole new level. Absolutely. I think that you should always eat houses made out of candy, because what could go wrong? That's another one. I really like that movie, the adult Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, which is very gory. Why do I like that, but not slasher movies? Things I
I don't
wonder
think I
about.
ever saw that.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that one either.
But I know what you're talking about because I've seen the previews.
It's fantastic. It's one of my
got
favorites.
Hawkeye from Marvel in it.
It indeed does. Everything could go wrong. Everything. Eating the candy in the house gives that character diabetes as an adult. So, I mean, you're not wrong. You're not dumb, and I love you. Recommend favorite horror novels. We did discuss some earlier, but I think it was before you got here.
Yeah, pretty much anything by Joe Hill, I would say. His short story collections, Full Throttle and Strange Weather, are good. Or if you like full-length novels, you could try Horns or Heart-Shaped Box. Also, I'll give you an indie recommendation as well that I always give to people, is Spider Season by Billy Hansen, I think it is. That was one of my favorite indie releases I've ever read. Or if you want to read a horror short story by Kate, you can try We're Not Home. Comes out tomorrow in America, or now in a lot of other places.
Wait, look. Ta-da. I could do the thing again. There it is. I linked it in the chat.
Yeah, Jessica.
Go me. I'm good for something. Nosferatu by Joe Hill is also great. And Christmassy. Weirdly. I haven't read it, but I know
they've got a TV show on that as well.
I think they do. They have a TV show on everything now. Which
They've
makes
got a
me feel
TV
like
show
my
on,
brain.
Lock and Key as well, which is another Joe Hill property, but it's comics, his comic series or
Oh yeah,
novel
there's
series, one of those two.
On Netflix, I think.
Hmm.
I really sounded like Mike. They got a TV show for everything now. I have officially reached grandma status. It's fine. I like to crochet. Yellow Wallpaper short story.
There's a lot of really good horror short stories on YouTube too. I know it's technically not reading, but a lot of because there's a lot of old horror that's become public domain, so people do audiobook readings themselves on YouTube, which is a really cool way to check out some old stuff. I didn't even know Devesha was here. Hey, Devesha.
Yeah, there's a grape here. They are also blowing me up in our group chat. So at the same time, I'm getting 2 conversations. It's a great time. Highly recommend. Except not really, which is a thing I say a lot apparently. Okay. Well, I think that's all we have for that topic of conversation.
Yeah.
We have. Thanks for hanging out with us, Cam, and talking about horror.
That's all right.
And all of the
I'm
things.
gonna go get some breakfast. No, I appreciate you guys having me on, so I could put on the horror hat and pretend I'm an expert for a little bit. Made me feel really special. I appreciate that.
Also, if you are not already subscribed to Cam, he is linked down below, as well as Kate. But again, if you're here, you probably are already subscribed to both of those people. But hey, maybe you met a new face today, and that is fine. Listen,
cool.
Grape, I could tell people what you're really saying in the group chat, but I won't. So,
oh shit!
You guys are roasting me in the group chat. I know it.
I wish, but no. I wish? That's horrible. Why would I say that? I wish it was just that.
I'll let you guys get to it. Thanks again for having me, and thanks everyone in the chat.
Bye, Cam. Thanks.
Antia's going.
Yes.
Look at this. Look at this.
Why can I guess what it was? Okay, Jess, I have to go to the bathroom real quick, so I'm gonna leave it to you, and I'm
No.
ready to discuss book stuff.
Okay. So as Kate runs away and leaves us on VinCam, we shall be getting ready to discuss this month's group book, which was The Girl from the Well by Rin Chupeco. So if you did read that with us, or if you would like to, I don't know, hear spoilers or what have you, then we will be discussing those. Since we're here, before we get into that, and because Kate is gone, I will tell you what our book for both November, December, and also January, February is going to be, because we already picked out January, February, and that way, if you need to get a copy from your library or whatever, you will have the opportunity to do so. So let's see. Let me see the thing with the thing. I was going to share my screen, but I'm not gonna because it's too much work. So next month in November, December, we will be reading Dash and Lily's Book of Dares. That sounds like a real book. Book of Dares. That's the first one, correct. By Rachel Cohn and David Levithan. There are technically 3 books in that series. I've read the first 2. I really enjoyed the first one. There is also a Netflix movie of that I have not watched yet, so I cannot endorse whether it's good or not, because I don't know, because I haven't watched it. But Dash and Lily's Book of Dares by Rachel Cohn, David Levithan, which is a YA centered around Christmas and super fun. And it's set in New York. So if you like Christmassy New York novels, which I always enjoy,
Ooh.
maybe you will too. And I might organize a group watch movie night. Who knows? Not me, but that would be fun.
Wait, what are we talking about? Next one.
Yeah, the November, December book. Because there's
Yay!
also a movie. Maybe we could do a group watch of the movie as well. And then January, February, I told our friends we would go ahead and tell them what the book was going to be. So if they needed to get a copy, we'd like to be a little more ahead than we have been, is the plan. So for January, February, we are going to be reading The Plot by, I think it's Jean Hanf Corlitz. That looks like a real name.
No.
I am going to type it in the chat. This one.
Jessica was pointing out how coming off the back of Who is the Bad Art Friend, this will be a very, very interesting read potentially.
It is, like, to give you the short little bit of it, it is about a teacher named Jacob who has spent his life trying to write the great American novel and has failed at doing so. And one of his students named Evan has this amazing plot for a book that he thinks is fantastic. And he's waiting for this book to come out. The teacher's waiting for the book to come out so he can be like, oh, my student wrote this book, blah, 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 whatever. Well, the student ends up dying before he publishes the book. And because the teacher knows the plot, he steals the plot and publishes the book himself. And then he gets an email that says, you are a thief. And then that's all I know. So it's kind of scary because it's going to be mystery, blackmailery, whatever. And also similar to the Bad Art Friend. So we've been keeping that one for a few months, actually. I heard about it somewhere and was like, we need to have this. And we were like, but
we've wanted to read it so bad, but we were like, but spooky season, but holiday season. And then
so that's where we're at with that. So that'll be our plan for the next 4 months. You've got those books. Let's chat The Girl from the Well by Rin Chupeco.
Yes.
which we both finished.
We did both finish. So proud of it. Also, we both really liked it. That's safe to say, right?
Yeah.
So I watched, what'd you give it, a 4.25 on your
Something
scale?
like that. Who knows? Not me. I'm supposed to know, aren't I?
Well, I just watched your video where you did it, so I'm pretty sure it's a 4.25, but don't quote me on that.
Yep, 4.25. You are correct. You know
I
better than
I so enjoyed this book, and in fact, there was a point where I was like, I don't want to get my hopes up too much for how it was going to end. And there is one thing that I messaged Jessica about that bothered me. But alas, it was kind of a small thing. So like I give it a pass and I still really enjoyed it. But other books, this has been like a make or break issue for me before. Where I'm just like, ugh, frustration.
So there is a sequel of sorts to this book. Would you read that in the future?
Yeah, I would read it.
Samesies. I definitely think, I don't know that it was necessarily a short book, but it felt short to me.
It felt short. I think the audio was only like 7 hours, which is pretty short, I think.
I don't know why it felt like a novella, but I know it wasn't.
Yeah, no, I agree with that though. It did feel really short, which I liked because it never felt like it dragged anywhere. It
No.
always felt really good. And in fact, it was kind of interesting how much time the actual story covered versus like time in that world versus how it felt, if that makes sense.
I just checked. Goodreads says it's 267 pages. So, I mean, a lot of YA is around 280, 300. So that's, I mean, it is a little short, but not enough
But
to
not a
have
lot.
felt short.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a good time. So if you are hanging around, basically, The Girl from the Well is about a girl from a well. What it's actually about is a girl who died in a well, and her spirit attacks people who murder children, essentially, to save the children from their spirits from their murderer to send them on to wherever we go afterwards. And there is a boy who catches her eye who is alive, and he has his own spirit attached to him in a way, kind of, sort of. And she's like, what is going on here? And so she becomes very invested in him and his stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. At what point do we want to start talking spoilers? Now that you've given that beautiful spoiler-free synopsis.
I just will say, obviously, we both enjoyed it. If it sounds like your kind of creep, read it. If you don't want the spoiler, get out. We're going to do the... Okay, spoil away. Have it.
It's time. I loved the evolution of the main character. It's been a while since I've read it, and I don't have a copy in front of me, so I don't quite remember all the names or any of the names. But I loved our main spirit haunt person and her evolution, because at first she just is like, oh, I have to exact revenge after they're dead, and then her thought process changes over time. And I thought that was done in such a beautiful way, and in a way that wasn't too quick or anything, so that now she's like, I can help these children and kids before they die too.
Yeah,
I thought that was great.
It definitely has that progression of revenge to actual help.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, both are valid points of contention.
Yeah.
And now I have the hiccups. It's fine. Jessica also really enjoyed it. And also Jessica really enjoyed it.
Both Jessicas really enjoyed it.
I enjoyed the aspect of the cousin.
Yes.
I can't remember their names either, and I tried to look on the thing, but it's not on there. So who knows what their names are? Carl, Steve.
That's what we got: the cousin, the boy, the spirit.
Girl from the well.
Girl from the well.
The girl from the well's name is Okiku.
Okiku, thank you.
I remember that. Quickly scrolling through Goodreads reviews to see if anyone names these people.
Perfect.
The answer is no. They do talk about like similarities between like The Ring and The Grudge. I would agree, as someone who has seen both of those movies, it does have some of that creep factor for sure.
Yeah, it does feel creepy, and I do get why it's classified as horror, because the deaths in there are quite graphic in some places, and also like the idea of an otherworldly object terrorizing the living is I think a common horror sort of thing, or like a supernatural and horror tend to go together sometimes. So I totally got it. It just, the actual way it was told was interesting. But I agree, the cousin being the true protagonist, like the true hero of the story, was so wonderful, because I didn't guess that at the start of the novel.
The cousin's name is Callie. Calliope? Does that sound right?
Callie does sound.
And the boy's name is Tarquin, which I remember now that I see it.
Yeah.
My brain's like, oh yeah, duh, Tark.
Yeah.
Tarquin, duh. Anyway, she kills the guy in his bathroom. I mean,
agreed. Yeah. No, that was so good. Actually, a lot of the death scenes really stuck with me, and as I'm writing Project Death, they obviously have to be done in a much different way, but I was like, oh, this is what I want to try and convey in some places. So anyways, it was inspiring.
I felt like it was interesting that the majority of the story, you're in the spirit's mind, in her perspective, and not from just like her perspective, but her perspective, which was interesting.
I love that she was the one telling the story. It was so cool to see how she's seeing everything, and when she realizes that some people can see her. So like she'd go whole pages, is what it felt like, narrating in what felt like a typical narrator voice, and then all of a sudden it'd be like, and then the person looked at me and you're like, oh shit, that's right, she's just in the room. It was so beautifully done. I was amazed that it was just so cool. It was so cool.
It was like that third person narration style that you're used to getting. And then all of a sudden they're like, and then they looked at me, or and then they grabbed my hand or whatever, and you're just like,
yeah,
oh yeah,
like,
I forgot I was here, but I like it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna. I actually really liked the first chapter introducing us to the primary spirit first. I liked that we got Okiku first, and her, kind of what happened to her / I mean, we learn more as the book progresses, but like I liked that introduction, because again, it was so interesting to go from her to Tarquin to then the cousin Callie, and then sort of back again as the book went. I just thought it was so cool.
To me, it's always interesting how like you can have main characters who definitely are made to play a part, but I think these characters specifically had a really good job of playing a part. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of times, even a main character can feel like a side character, because like you could take them out or give their job to someone else. Yeah. And here you could not have done that. Like you needed those 3 people specifically to do the things that they were able to do in the book. As far as like one person had to be a spirit, one person had to carry a spirit, one person had to be a spirit hunter, fighter, killer thing. Yeah. Here's the thing. I love the creep of her hanging down from the ceiling. Yeah, just like her hair, just like hanging on the floor, just chilling.
It was so funny to get the perspective from the other people seeing her, but we're in her narrator head and her just being like, I like ceilings. It was so funny.
But I like ceilings. And I'm like, I'm creeped.
I'm horrified. Yeah.
I have all of the creepy, but okay, let's continue. Sounds like a fun time.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, because much like you, I read it early and I should have read it closer too. So I would have more things to remember. I did like the scene more towards the end where she was like killing the large group of people, just like how brutal she was.
Yeah.
Ruthless.
Oh yeah.
And I was just like,
well, and I
okay.
love the evolution of how Callie felt that ruthlessness and how it terrified her for most of the book, even. Like, she eventually learns to trust Okiku, but like, even at the end, where when Okiku and Tarquin are like kind of jointly
Tethered.
Yeah, when they're tethered, like Callie's still like a little bit creeped out and is kind of like, I don't know about this, but you know, I don't know. I just loved how realistic the trust felt.
The mother, Tarquin's mother, who had been, I don't know, she died when he was little. But they talk about how she didn't die when he was little. She died
in the
later on in the book.
Right.
But she went crazy when he was little and was taken away.
Yes.
She tried to kill him when he was little. I'll get there eventually. What country are we on?
I like how it felt like a mystery.
Right. I liked the idea of finding out why his mom did like the tattooing thing, and the fact that the monster that she was trying to hold in was her sister, which means it was Tarquin's aunt. And that whole like talking about how like power corrupts people, because she thought that she was powerful enough to handle these spirits that she was not powerful enough to handle. And that in turn made her psycho crazy. And then she had to be tied to a living human because that was the only thing strong enough to hold her in. And like first off, dolls are fucking creepy.
Yeah.
They are. I used to collect porcelain dolls as a child, like even into my preteen to early teen years. And I wonder if that's part of why I am who I am. I used to collect dolls. I used to collect porcelain dolls, like walls of them. Now they freak me out. So I did get into a point where I started turning them all around.
Valid. Yeah.
So at some point they creeped me out, like as I actively had them. Yeah. But like dolls are creepy. And so the fact that we hear that they are taking these evil spirits and tying them into these dolls to like give them like a place to be held until they can exorcise them. I need exorcised. Anyway. So it's just like it has a lot of like that in the creep factor that you get in life, and they just put it all in this book and made it so wonderfully layered. All of the things. I was so happy.
It had the trope of the absentee parent in some ways, with the dad as the figure not really understanding what Tarquin's going through, and also like, and not that he didn't want to understand, but just like they make a point saying he wouldn't understand this supernatural thing and how he would be such a skeptic of it. And obviously he does what he can, which I appreciated, like taking him to the hospital and doing all this stuff. So it was just a really good spin on that trope, especially when his mom's after his mom's death too, and all this stuff. I also loved getting to learn more about Japanese culture. I thought it was really cool to see it from the emails that Tarquin and Callie were sending. Then, of course, with the when they go to like with the priestesses,
their
names.
It's a temple, essentially.
Yeah, and so it was really cool. It was really like kind of layered world building was done so well.
And I think it's like from the perspective of after all of the Callie, you're supposed to tell these people that it drank your blood, first off.
My God. Yeah. Should we just discuss the one issue I had with this novel?
Have at it.
Okay, let's talk about tropes that I liked. This is the trope that I effing hate. I already cursed on this. So I don't know why I'm trying to censor myself now, but I hate this trope so much. So it's just when like characters don't communicate, and it was done in such an overt way, so it wasn't even like the reader can miss it. It was like Callie basically thinks of something and gasps and like doesn't say anything, even when the other character prompts her, like, what is it? And she still says nothing. And then like later in the ceremony, it's no, this is like basically results in the death of some of the people in the temple. And it's just like, especially because Callie as a character had been so curious throughout the novel that it just seemed so at odds. Like she was asking so many other questions, like a scene before and a scene after, that it's like, why wouldn't you have asked now? Oh my God. Anyways.
And not only was she curious, she was also intelligent.
Yeah.
And me of average intelligence looks at and goes, you might want to mention that. Hey,
Yeah.
you might want to mention, oh, everybody's dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was weird. I think had it been not so obvious when it happened that we were supposed to pay attention to it, that it wouldn't have, or if, like you, as you said, if it hadn't been them asking her and her being like, oh, nothing. But I think that was for more of like building tension, but I think that scene had plenty of tension without that.
I think so too. Yeah.
So I agree that like that's a point of contention as far as like, I don't know that necessarily was necessary.
Yes.
If that sentence completes. So I don't know. I just like, I really enjoyed it. The end was fantastic as far as like, I love that him the evil spirit had been tied to him for so long that it was part of who he was. And if they removed that, they had to put something back in. And the only thing there to put in was Okiku. It made sense.
It made perfect sense, and I would not have guessed it. Like everything about the ending was so satisfying. And I love, again, Okiku's evolution, where she's like, this boy's lifetime for me is nothing. And this sounds like a great way to spend this chunk of time. And like even her, as she realizes stuff, being like, I can't ascend because this is what I'd rather spend my time. Oh, all of it was just so beautiful.
Really well. It was, I think it was 95% of it was really well done.
Yes.
And I would venture to say that this is probably one of the best books that we've read.
I think so, for book club. I think so.
I mean, definitely Evelyn Hugo.
I was gonna say that's the only other one that I'm like,
I can think of off the top of my head that we both were like, this was fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we can both name like the bad ones, or the one
bad
we
ones,
thought was bad.
Or one of us DNF'd and the other loved it, or was okay with it.
Yeah.
But I feel like this was one of our best, which is funny because we were talking about reading Rin Chupeco like in April and didn't do it. We went in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was when we picked the Maureen Gu book that I DNF'd.
Yeah, I think so too. Yep. So
here's to show we should go with our guts.
Yeah. That's what our for December's, are we gonna tier rank the books we've read? Like that's what we talked about doing, that right? Where we
should, like the last 2 years, or has it been 3 years? I don't know, however long we've been here.
Gosh, yeah.
How long have we been here? I don't even know.
It makes me feel old sometimes when I think about it. Since Jess and I started around the same time.
We also have discussed in January.
Yes.
Since there's 24 of you here and like, you're our friends, we've discussed that we would like to do like an anniversary party because it will be year 5 for us, our 5-year anniversary this year. And yours is technically the end of December and mine's the beginning of January, but
it is, but
it's real close. It's like less than 2 weeks apart.
Yeah.
So what would you guys like to see for like an anniversary live stream? I'm sure we can like ask on Instagram or whatever the things are. You can ask your patrons. I could ask mine, but it's you. So like, what do you want to do?
I will come up with ideas.
You and Wallace. What do you and Wallace want to do? you know, just figure out what we should do. Because listen, we both do so many things that coming up with ideas doesn't work for us anymore. Like our brains are fried. We need help.
Yeah, or we have so many other ideas that we're like, how can we force this into this thing?
We do that a lot too. How
Yeah.
can we make this happen?
Which is great. So many great things have come from it. You know, we have good ideas and bad ideas sometimes. We just have a lot of ideas.
Today, I decided that because Kate loves Notion so much, I'm going to figure out how it works so we can have an Authortube Chat Notion board and we can actually plan things.
I'm very excited. Yeah, it'll be better than our haphazard Google Doc that doesn't get updated.
There's a Google Doc. Okay. Better than the a random text a half hour before the chat. Do you know what book we're gonna do next month? Because did we pick a book? We did. Oh, okay. Do you remember what it was? No, me neither.
Should we change it? We should change it.
We're gonna need another Timmy. That's what happened today. We did have a different book picked out, but it is a newer release. Like it came out today or last Tuesday.
We can't find it.
We can't
Our
find it,
libraries don't have it.
like easily accessible. So,
which is
we
our
went
goal.
So we went with something that's a little older that I have read before and enjoyed. So we at least know one of us likes it.
Yeah.
Nobody really cares about Kate. So,
Oh, well, we got our resident booktuber over here.
I'm here. I'm over here. The one of us who has read a crap ton of books this month.
No, I know. It's insane.
But I haven't done any writing. So to be fair, we're both being productive, just differently.
There we go. There you go. I've read a whole 3 books this month, I think.
That's a lot for you.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good.
And writing. Like 2,000 words a day, supposedly. 3,000? 2,000.
I wish. It's not even.
2,500?
Not.
12 words a day?
It's supposed to be 2,500.
I knew there was a number.
No. Actually, it's supposed to be 3,000 total. You're right. But it's also not that either. Although, no.
Are you taking weekends off like you're supposed to?
Kind of. Yeah, I'm doing better about that. Although I'm about to do the Worldwide Writeathon. Missy, who organizes it on the weekends, understandably. So,
I'm like, I mean, y'all can have a write-a-thon during the week, but I ain't going to be there to back nobody up. I'm going to be at work.
Yeah.
Y'all can do whatever you want. And 5 in for the month with 2 left for the readathon.
Crushing it.
I should say the Black Weenathon, but for some reason, Weenathon just wasn't good. I knew I was going to mess it up, so I struggled, but we got there. Kristen's at 0 for the month, but you know what? We still love you.
And the month's not over, Kristen.
It's true. You have another third of the month to go.
Yeah.
Which just reminds me that I'm behind on reading books, but hey, actually, I mean, I think we decided 16 for the month, so like, if I don't read another single book this month, I would be happy. But I know I'm going to. So.
More than crushed it.
At least on car rides. Like, I'm happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm happy with where I am. Does anybody have any final comments, questions, or concerns about chat or reading books or about what we're going to be reading next time? Or ideas for topics for November's chat, or
we're here for your ideas.
Kristen wrote 13,000 last weekend, so not completely useless. I mean, that's more than I write in a month, so you crushed it.
You did crush it. 13
3 in for the month.
Heck yes.
Audiobooks are saving my life.
Mm-hmm. I agree, Grace. It's gotta be. We'll just. What is the? Gonna have to look up 3rd Tuesday of the month and see how far along in the month that actually is.
It is the 16th. Midpoint.
Okay, so perfectly. Yeah. It'll be what did we do for the first half and what will we change?
Well, what I'll change is I'll actually do something. Oh wait, we haven't started yet, so. I have to because I have a deadline.
You do have a deadline. I
I
also have a deadline. We can do this. We can do this, Jessica.
Okay.
That's the other thing we'll have to celebrate is that, I mean, 5-year
Hopefully.
anniversary, but also like exchanging
The third week of Tuesday. The third week of Tuesday.
the third week. Yeah.
The third Tuesday of January, rather. We should have exchanged by then.
We should have.
So it should be an exchange. Don't ask me are you asking how far along I am in writing my project for Kate? Because the answer is I've worked on it one day out of the 19 that I've had.
Miss Jessica.
Now, I will be Writeathon this weekend for sure.
Yeah.
And then I'm doing a mini writing retreat like Monday through Thursday-ish. So probably like 2.5-ish days of writing with travel time and things, but I will not be here. And then I'm on vacation next week. So I can finish out writing like the next week. I have a good like 10 days of writing time. So
Heck yes.
I've got some time to catch up on all the things. Anything else you'd like to talk about? Plug, mention, comment, question, concerns?
I don't think so. This was fun.
Okay, friends, we're going to run away. Everybody have a wonderful evening, and we will see you this weekend at the Writeathon. Hopefully.
Yeah.
My heart is so hollow, the blood as an echo inside of the veins. My heart is so hollow, your voice is narrow, making the